Hello everybody. Next up we make the trip up to Islington, where we'll be hosted by Arsenal. It's a 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff. Hurrah! Engineering works on the C2C and strike action on the Elizabeth line may mess your journey up a little bit. Also, should you be flying in from, say, for example, Malta, the weather looks a bit messy over France. Check before you leave and all that. So, Arsenal then. They've won 7 and drawn 4 of their last 11, and their last 6 read drawn 1, 1. This has left them in second place, 8 points behind Liverpool, who PGMOL have clearly had their pension fund on, in the absence of any semblance of reasonable form from Manchester City. So why are the Arsenal fans moaning then? Well, looking at their last outing as an example, they laboured to a 2-0 win at Leicester with 2 late goals, serving to disguise the fact that for much of the game they looked fairly toothless. They are short on attacking options at the moment due to the absence of Jesus, Saka and Havertz. Jesus has done his anterior cruciate ligament, while Saka may not have injured his thigh quite so badly had he not spent so much time throwing himself to the floor every 5 minutes. Then there was Havertz, whose injury prompted one of the most hilarious injury bulletins I've ever read. You see, apparently they were, and I quote, having a great training camp in Dubai, recharging, training, having some time off and connecting with nature in a different environment, when the injury happened in a most unexpected way. The statement didn't go into any further detail, but it does sound like we must add pulled up whilst hugging a tree to the list of bizarre injuries that players have sustained over the years. Anyway, their support are moaning about the lack of cover up front in Havertz's absence, much as they were moaning when he was fit and available for selection in the first place. Much of the discontent from their support stems from their lack of investment in the transfer window just gone. On the other hand, this failure to invest on the part of the ownership has gone down as well with Daisy as a pint of Scruttock's faintly dirigible ale, as expertly kept by Algernon, mine host at the Swan and Super Injunction. This is, of course, due to the fact that it means that Daisy doesn't actually have to do any research into new signings. The lack of new signings means that there's been speculation as to the reason for the lack of spending. Some of this speculation involves the departure of sporting director Edu, who has gone to perform a similar role at Forest and the group of clubs owned by their chairman. Whatever the reason, sources claim that Arteta has been angered by the situation, all of which has the usual sources with far too much time on their hands looking forward to the summer and who they might sign then. The funniest bit of speculation has seen Harry Kane's rumoured £54 million release clause thrown out there, licking the Cronkies with a potential swoop. Swoop, a word seldom used outside football articles these days, for the somehow England captain. This is a move that would be highly amusing, if only for the spectacle of tormented Tottenham fans testing their room temperature IQs in trying to work out whether they should applaud him or boo him. In truth, such a move would be actually quite good for the player as well. Last season's blip aside, the Bundesliga has reverted back to its more traditional one-horse race. This means that Kane is actually likely to win a trophy for the first time in his pro career, something that will cause him no end of torment as he works out how he should react. So a move to Arsenal, where he would be unencumbered by such worries, would be an excellent move for the player's mental health. Anyhow, enough of them. Let's move on to the wild and wacky world of association football, shall we? And PGMOL proudly went public last week to tell us that there'd been fewer VAR errors this season than at the same time last season. Now, there is a technical term for the making of such statements, and that term is called lying through one's teeth. Quite apart from them apparently taking pride in admitting that even when presented with video evidence slowed down, there are still a number of cases where they admit they've got no idea what they're doing. It's them who decide whether or not an error has been made in the first place. If they decide there's no error, then that error does not officially exist. A little bit like a murderer going into court and also being the jury, as well as the accused, then acting all surprised when he finds himself not guilty. As we will see later on, this is rather ludicrous. Elsewhere, the Sullivan family have put up a £10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of someone who tried to break into their Thaden Boys pad a while back. Thankfully, the alarms were set off before the perpetrator could half-inch anything. There are rumours in the underworld, so I'm told I should stress, that what actually happened was that the would-be Raffles took one look through a window and opted to leave the place well alone on the grounds of taste. Meanwhile, the good old Baroness has pitched up on a podcast, which I believe is kind of like a radio show you get on your computer or something, to take part in, well, not so much an interview as an act of worship. This took place on Sky Sports' Inside the Boardroom series. I guess when one of the presenters is fellow board member Jack, son of Sullivan, the likelihood of anything approaching real insight is on a par with the likelihood of Donald Trump developing some form of self-awareness anytime soon. I should comment further in more depth on what the Baroness is supposed to have said in future columns, as I've yet to listen to the full broadcast. However, by the sound of things, there's enough material in there to keep this column going for a good while yet. I shall comment on one aspect of the interview that has come to light. You see, apparently the Olympic Stadium, and no amount of rebranding as the London Stadium is going to change the fact that it's an athletic stadium, but apparently the Olympic Stadium is absolutely perfect. No, it really is. It's just the supporters who are in the wrong, because apparently we don't like change, which of course is a load of hogwash. Change would have been acceptable had it involved a move to a new venue purpose-built for football, for example. Baroness described the move as the right move for the right reasons. Those right reasons presumably being able to turn a quick profit on the sale of an old ground whilst paying next to nothing for its replacement. And that's before we even think about the lack of an anti-embarrassment clause in the deal that sold the bowling, which allowed the buyers to turn an instant profit by selling it on while the ink was still drying on the original sale. I would heartily recommend my learned colleague Mr. Barlow's article on the subject, elsewhere on the KUMB website. Nail on head, I think, best sums it up. Meanwhile, next time out, I hope to address the complex mathematics involved on how the Baroness has made football more affordable by raising prices and cutting concessions. And as for change, I think we all know there's one department in which everybody would welcome some form of change. Let's move to matters on the pitch. Well, the first 45 minutes last week were, damned awful. The 3 changes made at the interval were desperately needed and had the desired effect, up to a point. I thought we were the better side in the second half, and a bit more composure from Kudus should have seen us equalise. Brentford basically stuck 11 players behind the ball and fell over in agony every time someone came within a few yards of them. Then there was the penalty. Bowen was cleared out. It was a clear and obvious error on the part of Darren England, for whom every decision he makes usually contains some form of clear and obvious error. It was referred to VAR, who, instead of correcting the gobsmackingly stupid blunder, elected to compound it by adding it to the ever-increasing list of blunders they cover up to make the PGMOL figures look good. Remember that stat about how few errors VAR makes? This is the reason why. Those stats are dishonest as the organisation from which they defecate. Throw in the fact that the referee blew up early, allowing 2 substitutions and a lengthy fake injury to their keeper to go on without addition, and it all added up to yet another fine day for the idiocracy that is in charge of our matches these days. On the injury front, our luck hasn't changed any, I'm afraid. Paquetá's been injured in a training ground collision with Wan-Bissaka. Having gone over on his ankle, he's likely to miss this weekend and the Leicester match next Thursday. Soufal's thigh is likely to keep him out for a similar period, whilst Somerville is looking at an early April return. Despite encouraging noises, Fulkrug is still a good while away, and of course Antonio will be ages yet. The recent photograph of him on his rehab was good news, but the amount of muscle wastage on the leg with the most damage was rather astounding. So, on to the prediction then. Well, on the bright side, we won't have Anthony Taylor in charge, so that may save us a few goals, and Ferguson will have had another week training with the team. However, I think I see this going the way of Chelsea away, with any good work being undone by an official giving them a helping hand. So the £2.50 that I was going to spend on a copy of the Psychology Today article, The Top 10 Secrets of Effective Liars, to distribute to the hierarchy at PGMOL, maybe 1 or 2 other people, in the hope they'll stop trying to insult our collective intelligence, will instead be placed reluctantly on a home win. Let's call it 2-1 to them, shall we, Mr. Winston? enjoy the game.